Welcome back, everybody. I am joined now by Mike Rodden of numberFire Golf. He writes primers every week for the PGA Tour. You can find his latest on numberFire.com/golf. Also follow him at Twitter at Mike underscore Rodden, Rodden. He's been here before and he will be here again. We're here to talk about the Honda Classics, so welcome in, Mike. The Honda Classics is one of those events that I always enjoy, even though not necessarily the top names play in it. Welcome back to the show, Mike. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back again, Doug. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun the first time, and I'd like to. We'll probably keep doing it. The golf season's fun. Mike always has good information. Um, Mike actually picked one of my articles in a good time for soccer and won some money off it too, so that's good.
Oh yeah, the it was the 7:30 a.m. I'm like, oh, Doug wrote an article yesterday. There's a couple games today. Let me see what it is. I
Yeah,
look back and see it's 2-0-0 draws, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
I guess that didn't work out. And then I ended up in third place. So it was like not a. I don't play soccer that often just because of the timing of when it's at, but 3 o'clock p.m. I looked down and I saw it was locked, and I looked at a
Mm.
couple percentages, and then looked again at 5, and was like, oh, the games are over. I'm in the middle of my workday, and I was like, oh, got $100. That worked out well. So I always,
Yes. Oh, yes, J Mac. This was Mike. He tweeted that. Yeah, it was 2-0-0 draws. Horrible games for like they're supposed to be the biggest games in Europe, and then they both end up 0-0. It's ugly. Non-soccer fans are like, "What's this?" They got that's the games they have all the fuel to be like soccer sucks. But hey, at least there was something out of it, you
yeah, exactly.
know.
Worked out all right for me.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Mike. Well, let's turn our attention to golf. It is the Honda Classic this week, but let's recap what just happened. We had two events this past weekend. The WGC down in Mexico, which Dustin Johnson won easily, runaway winner. Followed in second place, 5 shots back by Rory McIlroy, and then kind of the rest of the field, more or less. So, what happened in Mexico? Why was it so easy for DJ?
Well, when he's on, it's pretty much easier no matter where he is because that's just
Mm-hmm.
the way his game is. So, yeah, the course is about 7,300 yards, but it is at altitude just outside Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that that's come up a lot of times with Monday Night Football games are played there, or different events that are in Mexico City. That there's that elevation where it really mitigates. Like any kind of the ball flight is going to be further in baseball games and field goals and football. So naturally, the ball's going to fly. Even though the course is 7,300 yards, it's probably played about 10% less than that. So it just turns into a driver pitch and wedge putt for DJ. And if you're going to gain, he was the number one putter and the
Mm-hmm.
number one tee to green player, pretty much going to knock it out of the park every single week at that.
Mm-hmm.
Just proved when he's on his A game, there really isn't anybody that can touch him. Like you said, Rory was the only guy within 10 strokes, and this
Yeah.
is the WGC event. This is like the cream of the crop. All the best players are there.
Right.
Yeah, it was a pretty good performance, but that's what you get with DJ when he's on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sergio with the decent showing. Justin Thomas, Paul Casey, Tiger, all kind of up there. I think at least -8 if I'm correct. But decent showings by all those. But how much do we care about what happened in Mexico going forward and for DFS golf?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the best golfers are good. You
Mm,
kind of like we know DJ's when he's not the number one ranked player in the world right now, he is probably the best.
mm,
Rory has won a couple majors and is right there. Justin Thomas shot 9 under on Sunday to really pull himself in contention after kind of being pretty weak the rest of the time. And then you see, Sergio, Tiger, like you said, all the names, Patrick Cantlay, even Kiradech Aphibarnrat, who's in the field this week, is
yeah.
like he's not somebody that everybody in America knows, but worldwide he is a really
Mm,
successful
mm,
golfer, especially on like the Asian tour.
right.
And but as far as what you can take away for future events, it's kind of tough. They're off. It's the last event on POA until they go back to Pebble for the U.S. Open. So
Mm-hmm.
we're to the Bermuda Greens and the Florida Swing now. And any event where there's no cut, it's sort of like what are you going to get? There could be guys that are just going for it after a bad round on Thursday, and then they're all the way fell back there. Whereas on a regular event, they might play a little more conservative and squeak across the cut, and then have a round like Thomas did on Sunday where they vault into contention. Somebody like Bryson DeChambeau, who was just like out of it by the time Thursday was over, and then he just never made his way back. He's somebody that can grind out a cut and then have a good Saturday, and then all of a sudden he finds himself in the top 25, which is really valuable on DraftKings and FanDuel when you're getting those finishing points
Right.
bonus. But on a WGC event where there's no cut, there's only 70 guys, it's sort of like, all right, I'm getting paid anyway. I'm going to try some stuff that maybe I can work on for next week. I'm going to try to hit this gap wedge from this range and try to serve it as some practice. And I think a lot of these guys that are way out of it do that. So something to take away. If the guys are playing well, then certainly keep riding them. But anybody that's not that was out of it, sort of like you can't really. You can say on one hand, JT shot 62 and pulled driver on pretty much every single hole on Sunday, and just like killed it. And then somebody else might have tried that and shot 10 over,
Yeah.
and just because of the way it worked out, that's like, oh, JT's on fire when really he kind of sucked for 3 days, even though he's been awesome for a month. So
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of take it. It's just like with a lot of things, you can take what you want from it, but ultimately it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Right, exactly. My buddy J Mac says that he got to watch DJ at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, so
Oh,
that's be cool. I have the last live golf event I was at was actually the U.S. Women's Open. I volunteered for it. I ran one of the scoreboards
oh yeah,
on the weekend. Yeah, so that was pretty fun. Um,
yeah. I did the PGA was in Baltusrol and up in North Jersey
okay.
3 years ago, I think, when Jimmy Walker won.
Oh, okay.
That was a cool venue. It was like pouring all night the night before, and they were actually kind of questioning whether or not they were going to get the round in or if they were going to have a delay. So we
Mm,
were just it was like a mud show. We were just like sloshing through. But I mean, then it was yeah, it was a beautiful day to go down there. We went on Friday, I think. So it was the second day, seeing everybody just seeing these guys bombing off the tee is like it's like you like look like a little kid out there. Even some of the small guys, like Matthew Fitzpatrick is like I feel like he's like 5'8", 130 pounds, and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
dominant 315 yards. It's just it's really impressive to see, and you grow a different appreciation like you do at any level.
Definitely, yeah. J Mac completely agrees with that. We had another event at the same time for the guys that aren't the big names down in Puerto Rico, which a lot of folks don't necessarily pay attention to. But we had Martin Trainer with the win, a name that a lot of people didn't know until he won down there. I would assume. Others there, Berger, Sloan, Wagner, Badley. Badley kind of I felt like he was going to win, but that's a name that I paid attention to. Yeah, yeah. But so Martin Trainer, he really didn't know what he won. Really, did he? He had no clue.
Yeah, no, I think he was from everything you read about this guy. It's a great story. He was grinding it out on the web.com tour. He's 27 years old, but this is I think he finished fourth on the money list in the web last year. So this was his first year that he could actually participate in PGA
Mm-hmm.
events, kind of like on the regular. And I think he missed the cut in 8 of his first 9 events or 8 of his first. It just like never really had got close until a couple weeks ago. He finished 28th, I think, at the Desert Classic, and
Yeah.
then now gets a win, which is first of all 540 grand, which is like, I mean, for in real life that's a lot of money. In golf, it's kind of like, oh, that's a small purse
Yeah.
for first. I mean, 540K that pays for him and his caddy to have traveled around for the last 6, 7, 8 years as a pro,
Right.
and finally get a little payday. You got to imagine, this, like the caddy doesn't get paid if you don't get paid if you don't make the
Mm-hmm.
cut. Like that's the thing that happened with Kuchar a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
His caddies are like how much they make is like in the news right now. But the for
Yeah.
trainer, he's got now 540K, a 2 year winners exemption on tour,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets into the Players this year and the PGA this year. So like that's a pretty big haul for 1 week where your life is completely changed.
Yeah.
Uh, the really crazy thing is it's not the first time it's happened this year. Adam Long won in
Okay.
back he won the Desert Classic a couple weeks ago in January where he beat out Mickelson,
Mm-hmm.
and now he's like he got over $1 million and a 2 year exemption and all these different things, and we've seen his name a couple more times since then. So
Mm-hmm.
it is crazy. Like as much as the sport is so top heavy with guys like JT and Rory and DJ,
Mm-hmm.
and that huge middle class of everybody from Finau to Woodland to any a million guys you can name
Right.
on any given week. Even though this was at a relatively small event, on any given week, anybody can win if you hit a lot of putts. You get a crazy shot that just like hits the pin and either shoots out or goes right in the hole. Anything can happen, and that's why I think it's so exciting and like kind of so frustrating when you're watching on TV and they show DJ standing over his ball for 30 seconds and then steps back and takes a practice. Like, come on, like there's like 130 other guys on the course and you can
Yeah.
still anybody else.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for Trainer, that's just a really a great thing for him and for for his family. I'm sure that it's been a hard road to be like grinding it out. It's like being a minor league baseball player practically.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as he's been doing it, it's pretty. That's a pretty good comparison, I would say, for sure. Awesome. Well, here to talk about the Honda Classic, really, with the quick recaps there. So they moved to Florida, down by Palm Beach, there on the Champions course. Underneath my image, you can see some rolling information about the course and whatnot. But I know they just underwent a little bit of a renovation on the course. Mike, could you maybe tell us a little bit about what they did to the course itself?
Yeah, sure. So the main priority was to make the greens a little bit bigger,
Hmm.
which is interesting because that's ranked as one of the most difficult courses on tour each of the last few years. Especially when you take out the majors, it was the number one hardest course last year. I think it was the second or third 3 years ago. So the main thing that comes along with that is hitting the green in regulation. So last year it was the fifth hardest on tour, the fifth lowest green in regulation percentage. So adding 14,000 square feet of putting space across the course, which is an average of 800 square feet per hole, that is like it could mitigate a serious defense that the course had.
Hmm.
On top of that, it's usually pretty windy, and the forecast doesn't look like it. So might see a little bit of a different look this week at the Honda. We're still like it's a challenging course, even when conditions have been good. It still is the 15th or 16th out of 40 or 50 courses in the rankings over the last few years. So with the added green space and calm winds, it could be a little bit easier than we've seen. But then again, the field's not quite as strong as it has been in a couple of years either. So
Very true. So there's still 26 water hazards and I believe 78 sand traps around the course. So it's not necessarily the easiest course, regardless. But the greens and regulation stat will likely take a bump. I would say we'll see that go up a bit. So
so
yeah. So I put a link to Mike's articles in the chat, and you can go there for some of his latest stuff, including the DraftKings primer as well. But Mike often talks about some of the stats that are important, and one of the ones that constantly is on there is opportunities gained, which is a stat that's kind of gotten more and more popular, especially after Fantasy National became a thing, I guess you could say. But that's suspiciously missing this week, Mike. Why is that?
So the courses in the weeks that I've used opportunities gained as a key stat. Now, for those that you don't know, that opportunities gained is sort of like greens and regulation on steroids. So it's in an opportunity, a scoring opportunity, is a green and regulation that's 15 feet or closer,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be whether you're on the green or on the fringe. And if you reach a green under regulation, so say you're reach the par five in two, or you reach a par four in one, then that would count as two opportunities. So Fantasy National is really one of the best resources out there, and they built this stat to show what golfers are putting themselves in the best opportunities to score the most frequently. It's definitely still a priority to get those scoring opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, like the Honda, where scrambling has been really important, and avoiding bogeys is maybe even more important than making birdies.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was necessary to prioritize it over something like scrambling or scoring on par fours, because you still get the iron play in with strokes gained approach. But with the opportunities gained, you're kind of you don't really need to make a ton of birdies here. You really need to avoid a lot of the trouble spots. So I think the cut the last few years has averaged around +6. So if you're making a ton of birdies, then you're going to be running away with the course, and guys just don't really do that here.
Right.
So that's why opportunities gained still should be weighted a little bit and kind of looked at, but it wasn't something that you need to do to have success here. You want to make hay wherever you can on your scoring opportunities, but guys just don't get that many here.
Right. Right. Exactly. Very true. Well, very concise recap. I appreciate that. I think everyone will figure that one out. So, looking back at last year, we had Justin Thomas win. Defending champion, he beat Luke List in a playoff. With the ever popular fantasy darling Luke List, who ruins a lot of people's lives with this play. Uh, Adam Scott is a former winner, beat Sergio by one as well. Some others, Ricky Fowler, Patrick Harrington is one here. I just like bringing him up. Russell Henley is a winner down the line. Um, just so y'all know, but Justin Thomas is really the only. Adam Scott's in the field too, right? I believe he
Yes,
is.
Adam
Yeah,
Scott, Justin Fowler,
yeah.
and Scott, the last 3 years winners, they're all
Yes,
in.
they're all in the field. So those are names that I think a lot of people will be looking at as well. But one of the things that we're looking at for making the lineups is the possibility that a lot of these guys that might be considered bombers are going to be clubbing down based on the course that they're working on. So how much should we be worried about that off the tee stroke if they're pulling the big stick out of the bag or not? What should that be into consideration when we're making our lineups this week?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the guys each week. So somebody like List, who you mentioned, who finished runner up here last year,
Mm-hmm.
List is really known as like a bomber.
Right.
He's just like bombing as far as you can. Hopefully, get a short wedge or a short iron in, and then pray on the greens. Like he's, I'm not gonna say he's a terrible putter or anything like
Yeah.
that. I had a little dust up with somebody on Twitter today about calling somebody a brutal putter. So I
Uh,
don't necessarily he's better putter than I am. So we'll see. He's a below average putter for a PGA Tour professional.
there you go. There you go. That's a good way to say
So
it. Yeah.
so it was surprising to see List really make a move in this event last year, and then again at the RBC Heritage at Harbortown, which is the another short course that List was in the top five for. Is somebody that you want to maybe target. It's not really true for all these guys. Somebody like Gary Woodland is a bomber off the tee. He was T49 last year, T2 in 2017, and T61 in 2016. So he's definitely somebody that you can find the guys that hit it far off the tee because usually they're going to hit their long irons far as well. And there are a couple of longer par threes here.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to look at strokes gained approach and the proximity stats from 175 and beyond over the bombers who just have good driving distance. So you have to really anybody that hits the ball the farthest off the tee probably hits their irons the farthest as well. But guys that bomb it and really spray it and kind of can't keep it in play, they're not the guys you want to target. It's the guys who can hit it pretty long and really straight. Those are the guys that you're really going to have a lot of success with. So people that aren't necessarily the longest hitters but are still long, guys like Koepka, Woodland, Justin Thomas, that aren't like up in that like Rory DJ level of
Mm-hmm.
bomb, but still a long hitter. They're just the best hitters give themselves the shortest second shot, and then therefore they have the best score.
Mm-hmm.
So the bombers are almost always going to have an advantage. But here you really want to focus on that approach and the better, longer iron player as opposed to just guys that just smoke driver.
Right. So Luke List is ranked 73rd overall right now in strokes gained putting, and 96th in overall putting average. 38.65% one putt percentage. So yeah, not the best guy around on the green. And 135th in three putt avoidance. The
Yeah.
when people roster Luke List, I always cringe for them pretty much.
I know, and I tweeted out the screenshot of another guy who's in that same vein as List, which is Joaquin Neiman, who's in the
Mm-hmm.
field this week as well.
Yeah.
Who it almost looked like a glitch. Sometimes the PGA Tour shot tracker would glitch,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it said, shot three, so it was a par four. I think he said he had a birdie putt
Mm-hmm.
for 3 feet, and then his par putt was also from 3 feet. Bogey putt was from 3 feet, and then he made a double bogey
Oh man.
on his fourth 3 foot putt. It was like it was incredible to. I was like, what is happening in this guy's day? But that's the kind of stuff that List is capable of. Where I think Pat Mayo, who's one of the most prominent golf analysts, who does the DK Live stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He has made the point that List is actually probably better from 15 feet than he is from 5 feet, which is like insane to think about. But you just trust him more when he's got to like roll it up there as opposed to when he's standing over it and his knees are cracking and he's like, this is more TV, and then he just pushes it or hooks it and you can't really do anything about it. So
Right.
the definitely not somebody that you want to target when putting is in play. And I do think putting is important this week, especially with the switch to the Bermuda greens,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
guys have been playing on POA for the last month, 2 months, depending on how many events they've played. And now you're moving into a different climate. It's going to be beautiful out as opposed to the crappy, rainy, windy weather that they had in California.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these beautiful, pristine, manicured Bermuda greens. It's just a different animal. So people that have grown up in Florida or in the South playing on Bermuda, or guys that have had a couple weeks off and have probably already been practicing there, are definitely guys to take a look at here. Even if they skipped the WGC last week, they might not be one of the best players in the world, but in that mid range, those are guys that you might be have some practice on these different putting surfaces because the difference is pretty massive.
Yeah, exactly. Um, just to mention, this is based off the FanDuel Sportsbook, but Justin Thomas is the overall favorite to win this one at plus 500. Ricky Fowler, Brooks Koepka, Sergio, okay, Adam Scott, Woodland, Webb Simpson, Billy Horschel, Cam Smith, Daniel Berger, Emiliano Grillo, and then Luke List is 12th. It's 12th.
I, it's even worse on DraftKings. He's 9,200 on DraftKings, which
Yeah.
is like, you know, when you consider that Cameron Smith is 9,500 and
Uh,
Webster's 9,600, Gary Woodland's 9,800. It's like for just a little bit more, you're getting a guy who, I mean, Cameron Smith's made 17 straight cuts worldwide.
right, right.
Webb Simpson's won a U.S. Open and the Players last year. Woodland's been on fire for the past 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, am I
Mm-hmm.
really going to play Luke List at 9,200 and he's only 40 to 1? Like, I think last year he was like 125 to 1. So that second place finish is really bumping him up. So it's going to give him more ownership in DFS sites and at a higher price.
Right.
It's like the opposite of when you want to go for somebody. You want to get them when they're at their lowest price and their lowest
Right.
ownership. He's going to be on the other end of both.
Right, exactly, exactly. Just one final note on the past winners. There has not been a defending champion at this event since 1978. It's just this crazy stat, just a crazy stat. So Justin Thomas, the pressure is on.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
and JT he's been here the last 4 years. So he missed the cut in 2015,
mm-hmm.
came in third in 2016, missed the cut in 2017, and then won last year. So he's just going to miss the cut. You can just fade him. You don't have to worry about
There
it.
you go. There you go. You heard it here.
That's analytics.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I did my best to prepare Mike about the guys we're going to talk about. No James Hahn surprises this week. So I gave him three names that I wanted to discuss. Just give me his thoughts. We started bringing up Woodland a little bit. I think everyone kind of knows him by now. He has his own line of Puma stuff too, J Mac. Even though Ricky Fowler is like the main guy, right, with all his fancy colors. I love Ricky Fowler's outfits. I usually do, but Gary Woodland was sporting some kind of like red, white, and blue outfit today that was a little bit out there. But talk to me about Woodland. Is this a guy that everyone's going to be on this week? Is so much ownership that we might want to consider fading him, or is he just playing too well?
Yeah, I think you can sort of go a couple different ways. I mean, Woodland is $2,100 cheaper than Justin Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Thomas is like actually I think pretty underpriced relative to the other guys. Like he's 11.9 at 5 to 1, and then
Mm-hmm.
the next guys are 10 and 11 to 1, and they're only a couple $100 cheaper. So I think going skip if you're going to fade Justin Thomas because he's going to be owned, and then you're going to just skip the other guys because if you're going to pay up that high, you might as well just get JT. Then I think a lot of people are going to do the contrarian thing and actually start their build with Woodland and make a really balanced lineup. And it's hard to argue with that. I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
second in strokes gained tee to green. This is in his last 50 rounds on tour. And these stats are from the Fantasy National that we had mentioned before. So second in strokes gained tee to green, fourth in approach. He's second in birdies or better gained. He's actually first in DraftKings points over his last 50 rounds. So he's somebody that does exactly what you need to do, which
Mm-hmm.
is make birdies. If he makes a bogey here or there, he puts together birdie streaks, and he has had a couple high finishes in the last few events. So he's definitely somebody that is in form, but it's just a question of the long-term viability of that because he's never really performed like this. Came in second at the Tournament of Champions, 80th at the Sony, which he was MDF. He missed the cut, or he made the cut and then didn't finish the Sunday. But then a ninth at the Farmers, seventh at Waste Management, and 17th in Mexico. Like he is just on fire world.
Mm-hmm.
even in the swing season, he had a couple top tens. It's hard to see why he's not in the elite of this field,
Mm-hmm.
and why somebody like Sergio, who like playing really, really well, why he's not the same price. And I think they're relatively close. He's about $200 more. Like you can't really go wrong with either. But people are going to see that 10,000 and go maybe like, all right, well Sergio's pretty high priced. Woodland's only 9,800. That just that mental thing of only seeing four digits. I do think people are going to go down and play Woodland instead. Even though I think Sergio is probably just as good of a play.
Yeah, yeah. I know Woodland is one of those guys that when I talk with folks about putting together a lineup, it just seems like his name comes up every week at this point in time. There's really you can't avoid it at all, in my opinion. So, all
Yeah,
right.
the one hard thing about him though with the pricing too is that like we look at the Tournament of Champions, which was the event he came in second in.
Mm-hmm.
I think his price for that event was like 6,900. Like he was like so low, just
Yeah,
because of the field you have in order to build a lineup, some of the guys have to be low, and it's
yeah,
all winners on tour the prior year. So he's somebody who's really seen as skyrocketing ownership and performance and DraftKings price and Vegas odds. Like he's really trending all the way in the right direction. But at some point, he's just not one of the best 10 players in the world. That's just not who he is. And there's going to be a round where he has, a 78 and then a 75, and he misses the cut by a million. And it's just a matter of like, do you want to be a week late for that, or do you want to be kind of just ride it out until he burns you?
yeah.
I think you can go either way. I know I faded him in the waste management. He was kind of like, I'm going to go with Phil. He's I decided I was going to play him early in the season because he's going to have a limited schedule, and I'm going to fade Woodland because he's been just on fire. Of course, Woodland finished in second and seventh. Mickelson had came in second the week
Yeah.
before, won the week after, and of
Yep.
course he missed the cut at the waste management might happen in our one and done. So
Right,
it,
right.
he's sort of like I'm at this point I'm either going to ride Woodland or I'm just going to never play him again until he goes back to being missing a few cuts, and then I'll be like, all right, let's see what the actual median performance of Gary Woodland is,
Yeah,
because right he's kind of out of his stars.
right, exactly. Agreed. All right, let's switch over to another player that interests me, but I don't know why. Because when you look at the stats sometimes, so Byung-Hun On or Benny On, depending on how you want to pronounce that, is somebody that's performed well here before. His stroke gains off the tee are good, but his stroke gains approach is not so good.
Yeah.
Uh, his if you look at tee to green, it's again decent. Stroke gains total is good around the green. He's first. Stroke gains around the green. He's first in on the tour. But the numbers don't necessarily match up for this course. But like I said, he has done well here before, and we can take maybe his bad greens and regulation number with a little grain of salt, given the information about the larger greens now. So what do we do with Benny on?
Yeah, I think on somebody who is, if you're not going to target a really like pristine approach player, somebody like a Justin Thomas or a Sergio, or a Webb or Billy Horschel, like somebody like that, then you're going to want to go for somebody like Benny On, who's can definitely get it out there off the tee and give himself a shorter club going in, and then he can scramble, like you said, first and around the green. I have him as 10th over his last 50 rounds on tour in scrambling gained on Fantasy National, and 17th in bogeys avoided in this field. So he's somebody that, excuse me, he either like finds himself in good scoring position or he can kind of salvage a bad situation, which is really the kind of guy that you want in this event if you're not going to get the guy who's just like throwing darts with his irons. I mean, I like on. I feel like at 9,100, he's somebody that is going to garner. He can be a nice pivot off of somebody like List, who's going to
Mm,
maybe get a bump in ownership and be at that high price, high ownership. And on, while he's maybe a little bit overpriced, is coming off a couple good stretches here and played well overseas before coming home and playing in the waste management. He had played a few events over in Asia, and it's just he came in 20th at the waste management, 45th last week. But again, that's in like a crazy field where one guy gets out by 100 strokes, and you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm playing for my next couple weeks. And also, there's a lot of people that like let's say the climate and the diet of the Mexican agua didn't totally agree with them. Eddie Pepperell, another a great Twitter follow, English guy, tweeted
Yeah.
out that I think he said that his game wasn't the only thing that wasn't solid this week. So kind of what you get for when you get WGC Mexico.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
never know what affects some of these guys. On is definitely worth a look. And like I said, could be a really good pivot off of somebody like List, who's right there in that price.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Eddie Pepper was a he's a good follow. Definitely, he's quite the character, and
No, he's just a legend.
yeah, I think he finished what like third from last or something in the field. Yeah, yeah, wasn't great, but hey, it's still entertaining, right?
I had him on DraftKings at
Oh
six
no.
in the lineup. I was like, I'll throw Pepperell in because I mean he came in sixth at the British Open at the Open Championship last
Yeah,
year when he was hungover.
yeah,
So
yeah,
this guy's gonna, he wants to show out in a strong field, and he's not gonna be afraid of these guys. Uh, he just also happens to not be quite as good as them either. So
yeah. All right. Last targeted player I want to talk about is the 5'8", 170-pound Harold Varner III. I believe he has the first tee time off on Thursday at 6:45 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. Um, he's usually has some pretty value pricing on all the sites normally. Overall, his stats are decent. They're kind of middle of the road, I guess you could say. His strokes gains approach is 94th, but it is in the plus category. Nothing really sparkling necessarily about his game as far as the stats you're looking at, but I know a couple of folks that I have talked to have brought him up for this week. So is HV3 somebody you're looking at all this week?
yeah, I mean, he's somebody that as I'm building lineups, I always seem to find, like you said, in that value spot where if I'm going to play Justin Thomas, that's $11,900 on DraftKings and $13,000 on FanDuel. Um, I'm gonna have to play somebody in on DraftKings. Like it would be in the mid to low sevens, or even in the 6,000s, and on FanDuel a couple guys in the 8,000s. So he's somebody that if he's in that range, it's kind of like, well, he's 13th in strokes gained tee to green in his last 50 rounds, sixth in birdies or better gained, ninth in bogeys avoided, 11th in strokes gained on par fours. And then there's other guys that are 7,300 that are like Scott Brown is 7,400. He's 104th in strokes gained tee to green. You know, there's some Martin Trainer is 7,000. Martin Trainer, who we just talked about, literally never had a shot at any event in his life until
Yeah.
last. He's just in the same price range there. You're kind of like, all right, well, I have proven track record and a fluke and a $300 difference. So Varner's somebody that I always seem to lean on, but then I kind of get to the point where I either have to take a stand on him and really go all in, or just say I'm not going to play this guy because I just don't think he's good enough.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, it's sort of like the weeks that I say like, all right, I'm not going to play Varner again. I played him the last 3 weeks, and then he has a 10th place finish at the weight management or something like that. Like it just happens that way with him because he's so tough to figure.
Yep.
He's really somebody that we want to target in the spring, I'm sorry, in the summer after the majors before the FedEx Cup, where there's that kind of this year the schedule is different with the PGA being moved up. But those events like the Quick and the Greenbrier, the John Deere, like those events against pretty weak fields where a
Hmm.
lot of guys play the Open Championship, and they're playing a few events overseas or taking a break leading into the playoffs. And they're easier courses and weaker fields, and Varner just smashed those guys last year. So it'll be tough it's tough to tell exactly which guy you're going to get. But the stats line up. It's just a question of whether or not he can sink the putts and whether or not he is really a rising star or just kind of a flash in the pan. He's definitely somebody with the stats that I'm always like, all right, well, if I'm down in this range, who am I going to play?
Hmm.
Guy that I know has top 10 upside and has good stats, or some guy that I have to like make a case for. And it's hard to turn him off. This week, there's a few guys in the 7,000 that I like, but he's definitely right at the top of the list for me.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, all right. So here's another stat I want to talk about. So each of the past three winners have had at least a top 12 finish in one of the previous 2 years before they won. Right. So if that trend continues, the winner has to be one of the following people. And there's a few guys that aren't on the roster this week, but Justin Thomas, Luke List, Alex Noren, Tommy Fleetwood, who is not in the field, Benny On, Webb Simpson, Jamie Lovemark. I played him so much last year. I hate myself for it. But Sam Burns, Emiliano Grillo, Kelly Craft, Dylan Fratelli, Tiger, not there. Fowler, Hoffman, Gary Woodland, three other guys that aren't there: Wesley Bryan, Chad Collins, Tyrell Hatton, Billy Horschel, Martin Keimer, Johnny Vegas, Graham DeLatte. Remember him? He's not there either.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, Paul Casey. He's also not there. Uh, Lahiri and Sean O'Hare. Those are the guys that have finished 12th or better the last 2 years. Any of those names pop out for you? Other than, wow, what a list that is, huh?
Well, that's something I brought up in my article as well.
Yeah.
It really is a ripe event for stars and scrubs. And the way to build your lineups on at least in my opinion, on DraftKings and FanDuel this week is pick which one or two of the high price guys that you really want to lock in and keep them if you're making multiple lineups. Keep them in every lineup and then just mix and match the cheap guys because there's going to be these just like off the wall guys who either win or make it to the top five. And then there's going to be guys that you're like, all right, well, obviously Justin Thomas is going to win this event. Ricky Fowler should win this event. Sergio is going to come in second. Major winners all around, except Ricky has he's won the Players, but he's competed well, especially at the Masters. Like he's a world class player. So you get this mix of these like world class guys, and then these who the hell's that guy? I think Morgan Hoffman is somebody who's had like a good history here. Michael Thompson is somebody who's been great in the last four events, has four straight top 13 finishes, and he's won this event back in I think 2013. So you're kind of like, am I going to really go all in on when guys when? But if you're going to, it kind of flows from a lineup construction, right? Like I really want to fit in these guys who I think have the best chance to win, and then there's like roll the dice on anybody, they might have a shot. The one name in there that sort of falls in the middle, I think, is Alex Noren, who is definitely on the upper echelon in the world, but maybe not the most well-known golfer to American viewers and fans. He's just somebody who ups his game in kind of the conditions where they might get a little tough. So in majors, he plays pretty well. I think he had a good Masters last year. He won a couple of times on the European Tour in strong fields, lead ups to the majors over there. So he's somebody that played in the WGC last week. So he came over from after a few events in Europe, and now he's kind of back acclimated to the traveling across the world has got to be pretty straining on the body. And playing, especially when you have to play 4 rounds. It's not like you just cut and you can just call it. So Noren's somebody who's like the stats don't necessarily line up, but his last 50 rounds on tour might go back like almost to the beginning of last year because so many of his rounds have been wide. So a lot of his events are just WGC events and majors, which are the strongest fields, or the Masters doesn't track strokes gain data. Last year at Shinnecock, the U.S. Open didn't track strokes gain data. So you're sort of like going by his stats isn't really the most effective way, but you just know that he is a world-class player, and Noren is 9,000 and Luke List is 9,200. It's sort of like which of these guys is actually the better caliber player. And I think it's Noren. He's just not a name that people click on because he's always priced in that range where if you want to go stars and scrubs, you're not going to find yourself in like the mid-9 range or the low-9 range. And he always seems to end up there. He might be a little bit cheaper in the really strong fields, but even then, there's like Kuchar's the same price, and everybody just picks Kuchar over him. So Noren's somebody that I definitely like this week. Another guy would be Horschel, who really finished strong in the FedEx Cup playoffs last year, and then has sort of lost his way a little bit. He was just an absolute beast with his irons, and he's actually lost strokes on approach in 3 of his last 4 events. But in the event that he gained strokes in, which was, I think, the Waste Management here as I bring up my stats, in the Farmers, he gained strokes and he came in 8th. So he's a guy that has a history, a long track record of having great approach play. And recently they've been off a little bit, but when he's on, he has the upside to have a top 5, top 10 finish. As you said, top 12 each of the last 2 years here.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I've Billy Horschel is definitely someone that's popped for me, and just a little bit of investigation I've been doing with this. So We'll see. I noticed the guys on PGAtour.com, the experts there, all went real safe with their winner picks this week. JT, Sergio, Adam Scott. I think three guys picked Adam Scott. So we might not see anybody too off the wall winning this one, but you never know with the PGA Tour, right? I'm hoping for a Kelly Craft or Graham McDowell resurgence at this event. I want to see it. I want to see it. But
Be Martin Trainer.
there you go. Yeah, Martin Trainer 2 weeks in a row. There you
Yeah.
go. All right. Anything else we need to know about the Honda Classic before we say goodbye for this week, Mike?
No, the one thing that I did want to mention though is a stat that I brought up. I tweeted it out the other night,
Hmm.
and I put it in my article. If any of your viewers haven't seen that, um, pertains to Ricky Fowler, who is obviously one of the top players in the world. He doesn't play poorly very often, but when he does, he's really, really successful in bouncing back. So he lost 2.4 strokes on approach last week in Mexico. The last two times that he's lost at least 2 strokes with his irons was the Farmers this year, the next event he won, the Waste Management, and the other time was the Houston Open last year. The next event after that was the Masters, and he came in second. So
Hmm.
he is a world class player with his irons, and he's always gaining strokes with them. So if something happens one week where it doesn't go well for him, it's probably not a lack of form you want to run away from like it is with some guys. But with him, it's like something weird happened and he's going to get back on track. So as he regresses back to his mean, there's going to be that outlier. And betting on him to have that in a field like this, at an event where he's won, on a course where he's comfortable, I think is a really strong move, especially when everybody's going to pay up for Justin Thomas if they're going high. I think Fowler is somebody who never goes under owned. But if
Hmm.
you go overweight on Fowler and underweight on Thomas, Thomas could easily win as he can every week. But I think Fowler's the guy that I'm going to be targeting as opposed to just like eating all the chalk that Justin produces.
There you go. All right. Well, as always, Mike, it's fun talking to you. I will definitely have you back on. It's just fun bantering in. You know your stuff, so I very much appreciate that for sure. So we'll see. I'll put his information in the chat one more time so you can make sure to go read his latest stuff that's out there. Get some good soccer cover or good golf coverage over there on numberFire. So thanks again, Mike. We'll set up a time for another event shortly. We got some good events coming up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you having me, Doug.
All right, man. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. See you later.
See you later. All right, everybody. Um, that's Mike. It's nice of him to come on as always. I just wanted to say that if you're looking for a off the wall play, I'm telling you that Kelly Craft play isn't as weird as it might sound. Even though he hasn't had the greatest luck recently, he did finish, I think, tied for eighth last year. Led the field in putting inside of 10 feet. He missed only 3 of 67 tries, 28 of them from which were outside of 3 feet. So it's an interesting play. But thanks to Mike for joining me again. I will again put his link in the chat there. You can check that out. You can check him out on Twitter at Mike underscore Rodden. That's Rodden. And follow him and check out his articles weekly as the PGA Tour progresses. But we'll definitely have him on again. So thank you again, Mike, and thanks everybody for watching that. We'll continue these conversations throughout the year, covering different topics as they go along. So thank you very much.